Last chance for the Cougars. Mill the catch, wrestled down on the 2.
And now Lewis going to run back and take a safety. He's going to go ahead and take the safety.
Recruits, come play for this man, best coach in America.
Yeah, I just love this football team.
You are listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Review. It's the Online Sports Guys College Football Week in Review podcast with us, the Online Sports Guys, talking about everything that happened this past week and this weekend in the wonderful world of college football. And guys, I'm going to cut straight to the chase. We got a couple of really interesting, kind of crazy storylines this week. Probably the biggest game, the game that got the most attention in the college football world, and justifiably so. Coastal Carolina and BYU. That was one hell of a game, wasn't it?
Last chance for the Cougars. Mill the catch, wrestled down on the 2. Coastal wins it.
Well, it wasn't a game we were supposed to have. We were supposed to have Coastal Carolina and Liberty. And obviously, with the COVID outbreak in Lynchburg at the Liberty campus, that had to change on Wednesday. And I just thought it was quite interesting how the two ADs got together pretty quickly and threw together a game. And it amazes me. It's about 2,400 miles from Provo, Utah to Conway, South Carolina, which for you geography buffs, it's just west of Myrtle Beach. And they were able to load a truck and get their equipment there in time. To me, the MVPs are the bus drivers for BYU, the truck drivers for BYU.
Guys.
Yeah, they get all that stuff and not make a mistake. Because they had less than 8 hours to get that loaded and on the road to make it. And I'm sure it's not an easy drive in the wintertime to go across Utah, Colorado, and the Rocky Mountains to get to Conway in a good period of time. Yeah. So, to me, this kind of kills the concept of having games out 10 years ahead of time.
Yes, no doubt.
I was going to get
that. Now you can throw together, if you can throw together a game in 3 days like this, why not do your scheduling after the season?
Yeah.
And that just makes a whole lot more
college football.
Yeah. I mean,
just put flex
hey, we're going
to
play. You think about, if you're a fan, I'm going to use Arkansas as an example because I'm a Razorback guy. Right. But 10 years down the road, we're going to play Clemson. Oh yeah, but Trevor Lawrence isn't going to be your quarterback then, and Travis Etienne isn't going to be running behind. It's going to be whoever is in first grade right now.
Really?
So. That concept, I've just never understood the concept of scheduling way ahead of time. Why not throw these games together after the season to see the current stars play against each other in these intersectional type of games? I think college football fans should demand that.
Yes.
So I think the cat's out of the bag, and I think we need to salute Coastal Carolina and BYU for that.
I look at this game, and first and foremost, it was a hell of a game. I mean, there's no other way around it. It was a hell of a game. And when you have all of the different storylines to make this happen, and I know there's an article out there somewhere that actually talks to the guys who drove the 18-wheelers to get everything from BYU to Coastal in time. When you have all of these subplots together, when you have the excitement in the game in and of itself, when you have the four-letter take their pregame show to Conway, South Carolina, when you have all of this activity that's locked up into a game like this, and I think it was only the third time in college football history where you had teams that were this successful, playing this late in the year. I mean, it was all of these different things adding up. And you compare this game to a lot of the other games from the weekend, and I will take a game like this with two go-5s all the time, beating each other's brains out and coming out with a hell of a game where the first half took 56 minutes.
Yeah, see, that's the key right there to me, was the way the game unfolded, because both are physical teams, and BYU is physically bigger than Coastal Carolina. Yet Coastal Carolina owned the line of scrimmage, especially that offensive line going against that huge defensive line of BYU. That to me was the key, and how physical that game was. You had all the intrigue of Zach Wilson getting the hell beat out of him right before halftime, and then again right at the beginning of the second half. So you had so many intrigues. You had evenly matched teams that were playing at a high level, and I think the way those two teams are built and geared, they could play the lower level and even mid-level Power 5 schools. They would beat pretty well. I mean, I think that they're that good, that's skilled, especially at the end of the year when you're kind of peaking toward a championship level. It had everything if you're a college football fan. The only thing it didn't have was a full house and everybody tearing down the goalposts at Coastal, because that's what would have happened had you had a full house there. I think that's the only element it was missing, and yet you didn't miss it that much.
And they had the ultimate marketing gimmick too, the Mullets versus Mormons.
Yep.
And what's interesting is both sides sold those T-shirts.
Yeah.
And they were hastily made. That's going to be a hot commodity in the next few weeks. I'm sure Brother Nelson's already got his on order.
You are correct, and it is on Teespring, by the way. You do a search for the T-shirt. The guy has a Teespring store, and I give the Coastal Carolina student a boatload of credit for doing this in the vein of Catholics versus convicts. Knowing the history that was there, he comes up with the idea of Mormons versus Mullets. And you're damn right I got a Mormons versus Mullets T-shirt coming to Office HD. I wasted zero time when I got the backstory on that.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you guys this, talking about how good the game was and how these teams have done over the course of the season, with Coastal getting the win and going to 10-0 on the season, and potential Sunbelt title game with Louisiana in the offing. If they run the table, are they potential pick 6 material here?
It better be.
Well, obviously they have to be the highest ranked group of 5 team to get that.
So Cincinnati has to lose.
Right. I think it's going to be tough for them to overcome Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But if there ever was an exception, I think this might be it. I guess Coastal's season is, they got Troy next week, which is a makeup game. And I think they've already clinched their side of the Sun Belt.
They have.
Really, what's the point of playing that game in this era where you can opt out of games? It's a postponement, makeup of another game. So I can see Coastal's view on that as to, okay, why do we need to play this one more game when everything's kind of settled and we got to get ready for a game in Louisiana, and once again we want to up our conference profile. So I can see an argument there. I don't think it's going to be a successful one, but there it is. But going back to this game and having a national presence, even though it was ESPNU, it was a national presence. A lot of guys got a chance to showcase their skills. Zach Wilson, to me, just upped his draft profile big time with some of the throws he made in that game. And then you have Grayson McCall. I mean, we've known about him all year, but the nation got to see him. And I think when you start looking at Heisman for 2021, Grayson McCall's name's going to be on there now. And he got that national profile. And then you got Tyler Allinger, who, man, how many tough, hard runs did he have for BYU? And CJ Maribel. We've known about him all year, but the nation got to see this kid is tough as nails. So this was a huge positive for both programs. The game came down to 1 yard.
I know.
1 yard.
Yeah. And you mentioned CJ Maribel, and CJ Maribel went to high school here in the Atlanta area. His program is not known for its success on the field. I mean, they are a very it's been a very, very lean, long time for CJ Maribel's high school program. But I think what guys like McCall, guys like Maribel, guys like Zach Wilson, what they show you is that if you have the ability, regardless of where you go to school for high school, these schools will find you these days. These Go 5 schools will find talent that fits what they're looking for, and they will put you in places to succeed. And we got to see that across the board with these two teams where, you know, they're not guys that are 5 stars and 4 stars. You're looking at 3s and 2s and maybe not even that on the landscape. But if you're put into a situation to succeed, you get to see what the end result is. And the nation got to see that expanded with this game.
Hey, what was interesting to me was Coastal runs kind of a variation of a run-pass offense, and a lot of option, a lot of movement, and that really is difficult to prepare for, even if you have a full week to play a game.
Yeah.
And BYU only had a couple days to try and learn it, and that Coastal, once they realized they could run the ball, ran the ball super effectively, and Maribel had over 120 yards. But is it a challenge when you're in that kind of an environment and you're trying to deal with a team that runs something that you don't see every day if you're BYU? Because you don't see that out west or in the Mountain West Conference or anywhere where BYU plays.
I thought BYU did a nice defensive adjustment with that. They brought another player into the box. So they recognized the option. The thing that really helped Coastal in this game was that offensive line. They were outweighed big time. The defensive line of BYU's is tough. They're physical and they're huge. Mm-hmm. You got 300-pounders and 280-pounders that have quickness, and that offensive line just leveraged a smaller offensive line, leveraged that defensive line to where Maribel had holes to run through. And I thought BYU's lateral speed was just as good, but the blocking by Coastal was just spot on. And that's how well played this game was. And you only had 3 days to prepare. I mean, that to me is the I don't want to say miracle, but that's the thing to me that really got me about this game.
Yeah.
You only had 3 days to prepare 2 totally different offensive philosophies, and yet the defenses adjusted to those, I thought, really well. And that I think both coordinators on both sides of the ball should be saluted for this, as well as the players. Because you don't need to stay up 24 hours a day and watch film all day. I'm sure they watched it on their laptop, but they sensed it on the field, what was going on. They didn't go to tendencies the whole time. They let the game come to them and they adjusted. And that to me was very refreshing. You know, I think this game has really put a lot of perspective into college football now and how it's going to go forward.
I hope so. I hope you're
right. If this was a Coastal blowout or a BYU blowout, we're not talking about this.
No.
The way the game unfolded and the talent on the field and just the way it ended, I mean, BYU didn't lose this game. They just didn't score enough points.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Well, and Wilkie, to your point about the size disparity there at the line of scrimmage, with an offense like what you see from Coastal, which is it's RPO, it's fully loaded pistol, it's whatever you want to call it. If you have linemen in this offense, and this is assignment football, except it's done with more variance that we're used to seeing. I was listening to the BYU radio network, and the comparisons that they were drawing up were in the old days when BYU would be playing Air Force, except it's with a twist now. And so that's what the BYU guys were seeing with this Coastal Carolina team. And when you have linemen who can get to the point of attack first, and they know where they're going with this, if you can get there first, isolate what's going on, and create those holes, you see the running game with McCall, with Marable, and so on. You're seeing all of that stuff happen. And it was, you had, and the emotion. Let me get into the emotion of this whole thing, and where you had
chippy.
Yes, it was very chippy, and
which added to the intrigue. I'm telling you, this is what made this game appointment television.
I mean, for me, this is game of the year in college football right now. This is the game of the year.
The field.
Yeah,
it's old school traditional football at its finest. And to me, it speaks volumes as to how corporatized college football has become, because you're seeing the brand names do certain things, and their games really aren't that much fun to watch. This game was fun to watch.
Yeah,
it was. I just wish they had a full house. That's the only thing, the one caveat that was missing from this game. But one more point about this game, and I thought I watched the ESPN broadcast, and I want to give a salute to my buddy Bill Roth. He did a great job calling this game.
Yep.
They put up a graphic about BYU's schedule before all this happened, and on the side of it was kind of how the schedule played out and how many crossouts and replacements and more crossouts and replacements that BYU had. They've had a crazy schedule to put together, juggling like crazy to the point where, hey, we got to be in Conway, South Carolina in a couple of days. Will they rush out? Mm-hmm. So the fact that they've only lost one game, and
it's impressive.
And it's, to me, it's not even a loss. I mean, like I say, they didn't score enough points. Just really impresses me about those kids and that coaching staff and that athletic department to be able, and it's a team out west too. And how many of those teams out west have just kind of, it's COVID. You think of Oregon, and Oregon has lost 2 in a row.
Yeah.
So I'm fully impressed with BYU's attitude through this, their the way they've gone forward with this and been able to play the games and play it at a high level. I have nothing but I'm so impressed with that athletic department. I can't say enough about them.
Yeah, moving on with another Sun Belt game, because I think the Sun Belt took front and center stage this weekend. Another good game, Louisiana and Appalachian State. The Raging Cajuns got the 24-21 win. I don't know if you guys saw this.
Gotta hurry this thing up, and now Lewis going to run back and take a safety.
Toward the end of the game, the Cajuns go back to punt, and instead of trying to punt the ball or get rid of it with like a minute or so left in the game, they chose to take a safety and give App State a chance to. App State got the ball back still with a chance to score.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily for them, the Mountaineers missed the field goal attempt. Louisiana gets the win.
Staten for the tie. No good.
What do you think about Billy Napier's move there? I mean, you probably saw the punt snaps or lack thereof.
Yeah, his long snapper had a long day. And, I mean, I understand that notion of wanting to do that in the moment. Napier defended it post-game. And, let's put it this way.
I get the logic.
I mean, I do too. It's a lot of yards, but you would have thought that maybe 5 or 6 seconds, more than 5 or 6 seconds would have gotten off the clock if you had all the yardage that you wanted to just sit there and take a minus on. I'm just going to say this. Napier was incredibly lucky with his decision-making process, considering that Appalachian State came down and had a chance for that field goal, except it gets tipped, and then it ends up not getting points on the board. But I'm just going to say, coaches are wired differently, Wilkie. Billy Napier, we know, is wired differently. In this case, he goes with his gut, and he gets out the door with a win.
Well, sometimes you got to be lucky than good. Yeah. And they got lucky, you're right. But he lost confidence in his long snapper.
Yep. Reese Burns The junior from Melbourne, and a terrible snap, and this all the way back to the 11-yard line and not free. App State is on it. It's a touchdown.
I totally get it. That's totally understandable. I saw it in the Arkansas game against Missouri yesterday. With 2 missed extra points by Arkansas, Sam Pittman didn't have any confidence in his kicker anymore. So Reed Bauer. So he goes for 2 and goes for the win and got lucky. Deflection off a Missouri DB into the arms of an Arkansas receiver, and Mike Woods, and I was pretty happy at that point. And then obviously the defense was just not there with
suboptimal.
Grant Morgan on being injured, and Arkansas loses on the last second field goal. So there's times where you just lose confidence. You're either your long snapper or your kicker, and you just go with your gut. And really, both times they worked. For Arkansas's sake, it ended. The defense let them down, but for Louisiana, they got lucky, and it was a win. And now they're in the title game.
Now, speaking of the Sun Belt, the latest AP rankings just coming out. We were just talking about the Raging Cajuns. They come in at 17 this week. Coastal Carolina making a big move up to number 11, leapfrogging over the Georgia Bulldogs. Nice to see that.
Now let's see where the CFP puts them when everything is all said and done.
Doesn't really mean a whole lot, but it sounds great.
Yep.
But I just thought I wanted to pass that breaking news along.
You need a breaking news sounder if you're going to do that.
I do have one.
Post-production.
Yeah, it's post-production. I don't have it that I can play live, unfortunately.
Okay.
Getting into some of the big boys, most of the games really not that overly interesting this week.
No.
Alabama at LSU.
Next.
Last year would have been really big deal. The only noteworthy thing in this game to me, Devonta Smith should be in the Heisman chase. Just because he's not a quarterback doesn't mean he's not the best player in college football. 8 catches, 231, 3 TDs, including a one-handed grab in the back of the end zone that was absolutely fantastic.
Jones goes to the end zone. Oh, what a catch! Devonta Smith.
Notre Dame, a big win. Ian Book, another good game. 3 touchdowns passing, 45-21 over Syracuse. Clemson, kind of an ugly game, Wilkie. A game that you had mentioned last week is one to look out for. They rolled over Virginia Tech 45-10, but the game really was a little closer than the score indicated.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, Virginia Tech was way outclassed in this game. Clemson has a superior talent. It's interesting to me that 5-6 years ago, you would probably had Virginia Tech and Clemson on the same level.
Yeah.
I think Clemson is a product of not only of their success, but the success breeding into more cash flow from boosters. And Virginia Tech has kind of hit that mediocrity, that the coaching change of philosophy. And, they're not apathetic fans at Virginia Tech, but they're just not getting the bang for their buck. And that's a donor base that is throwing a lot of money into facilities at Virginia Tech. And so I'm just kind of marveling at the stark contrast between the two now, because Virginia Tech, to me, was a gold standard program, still is in the ACC, but obviously, the arms race has not been kind to the Hokies.
A couple other games to mention here. John, you actually got to see this one in person, Texas A&M and Auburn.
You had to bring that up,
the Aggies kind of ground that one out.
Yeah.
Good win for them. Keeps them rolling. They're up to 7-1 on the season.
I look at Texas A&M, and I hate to break it to everybody in College Station, but the University of South Georgia Gainesville campus is a better team than Texas A&M. Texas A&M was very fortunate in what happened in Auburn. I will say this, that when you have the aircraft carriers and how do we say ample bottomed line that you have for the offense that you have, I mean, literally they just out-muscled a more athletic. What you had is contrast of styles, and you had an athletic front seven going up against basically a bunch of road graders. And in the fourth quarter, all of that muscle and all of that weight, and all they're doing is they're just going full sumo on you, and they're just pushing you down the field. And then Texas A&M scores 17 points in the fourth quarter, wins it 31-20. Texas A&M ain't that good. I'm just going to say it right now. They ain't that good. And when they go up against other quality competition, they're going to be exposed. Kellen Mond, 18 to 23 for 196 and 2, but good for you. The biggest thing is that defensively, Auburn was victimized by the cutback, and you had running backs like Isaiah Spiller and everyone that was put in that backfield. When they would go with the down blocking, you'd have maybe a 2 or 3 yard gain. Then the Auburn defense comes in from behind, closes that cutback lane. There's nothing there. And this tape is going to get out. When the cutback lane was available for the running game for Texas A&M, that was when Auburn got gashed. And you saw a lot of chunk plays involving the running game in those instances. You look at Bo Nix and one of the plays of the year, very Fran Tarkenton-esque in escaping for his touchdown. I had people texting me literally going, I've seen this play 5 times. I have no idea how Bo Nix got out of trouble and got into the end zone. It seemed like also Chad Morris maybe waited a quarter or two to get guys like Tank Bigsby involved, get guys like Anthony Schwartz involved instead of having them involved in the offense early on for whatever reason, resting them for a quarter. I don't know. But
May the Schwartz be with you.
Exactly. But it took entirely too long for those star individuals in your offense to get integrated into your thought pattern. So there were a couple of different things here that obviously can raise concerns. You had about 20,000 very angry people leaving the building when it came to Gus Malzahn and his future. But if you've got a $21 million check that can cut a buyout, then more power to you.
Well, the offense has been kind of a hit or miss for A&M all year. But I think your observations are pretty much on point. What were you asking, Phil?
Kyle Trask did he help his Heisman Trophy candidacy this week when Florida takes down Tennessee 31-19?
National TV has a
sheer
Kyle Trask type game. He was fine.
33 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. He's good. The game that kind of stood out to me is the Big Ten, Indiana, Wisconsin, because Indiana lost Michael Penix Jr. for the year.
Right.
And Jack Tuttle came in and kept the ship sailing straight.
Yep.
And really the difference in this game was Indiana's defense. They got into Wisconsin's backfield throughout the game, and Graham Mertz was running for his life half the time. They got him 3 times. But the impressive tackles for loss by Indiana, to me, was the difference of the game. Offensively, both teams were kind of grinding out there, but Indiana was able to get it done and get it done on the road. So that bodes well for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, you look at the breakdown of this game, Wisconsin had the ball for 10 more minutes, outgained Indiana by 130 yards, and still lost.
To me, time of possession and yardage are some of the most worthless stats in today's offense. For me, there's a difference between yardage and home runs. You can give me all the yards and all the time of possession you want, but if you're not putting the ball in the end zone, then to me it's like, great, you got numbers. Your stats are going to be fantastic, but the bottom line is you didn't win a game.
That's kind of Indiana's defensive philosophy, bend but don't break, and they're able to get into the backfield of Wisconsin. Yeah, that was the big difference for in that game for Indiana.
Did you guys see at the end of the game when they were interviewing Indiana that I love to see the guys running out that support Tom Allen on the field. Not every player, but most of the players came by, interrupted the interview, but it was absolutely great TV, and it shows how much of a hold that he has on that team and how much they love and respect their coach.
Right here, let's go. Best coach in the nation right here, man. Let's go.
And that might be a pretty good clue as to why they're played so well this season.
All you have to do is look at that video from their first game, their first win over Penn State, and see that locker room video. It tells you all you need to know about how those guys feel about Tom Allen.
I'd love to see that. Guys, what do you say we wrap up, if I could say it correctly, wrap up the first half of the show here on the review.
Right on.
When we come back in the second half, we're going to look at a few more games, talk about a coaching change, a coach hired at South Carolina, and I want to get the guys' opinion on potential schedule changes in order to accommodate having your team be in the college football playoff. All that and more when we come back for the second half of the review. You are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Like the voice you're hearing on this podcast? It could be on your production too. Just go to goodpipesvo.com. That's goodpipesvo.com and reach out to Steve Henderson on the Contact Us page. Go to the website, click on the Contact Us page, and then see what Steve's Good Pipes can do for your upcoming project.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game.
Congratulations, you have made it to the second half of the show. For those just tuning in, this is the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Yes.
Because I spit that out for some unknown reason. We are the online sports guys.
Days, brother.
And yeah, I'm going to do the obligatory promotional stuff here. Find us on social media at OSG Sports on both Facebook, Twitter, and also you can find us on YouTube. If you're watching this, it means you probably have found us on YouTube. Unless you're watching in Canada on Zingo.tv, channel 250.
Right on.
We thank you all for tuning in. And if you have anything you want to let us know about, be sure to tweet. Be sure to hit us on Facebook. Or you can even email us at osgsports@gmail.com. John was just showing you the phone app. Download it today at the Apple Store and Google Play. It is free. Guys, before we get into some of the minutia of the game or what happened this past week, I wanted to talk too about Miami because I left them out of the first part of the conversation.
You didn't miss anything.
The Hurricanes played their first game in almost a month at Duke, and it's like they never left. 48-0. Derek King, 16 for 24, 248, 3 touchdowns passing. That to me is impressive to take that much time off and just don't really show any rust, although admittedly Duke isn't exactly a powerhouse team this year.
Well, when you play in a bowl game, you take a month off, basically.
True.
So it's about the same thing.
Year.
No, not this year. Look,
and they couldn't practice all of that time.
Right. Think about which may have been a benefit because
they're
healthy. They're healthy. They're not beat up. Think about it. This whole thing about having a lot of time off and being rusty, that's been kind of thrown out the window this year with all the craziness, man. You think about all the all these things you've heard in the past have just kind of gone out the window this year as far as college football. It's really interesting. But yeah, Miami was still tuned, and De'Ara King was doing De'Ara King things that he's done all year, and they put a whooping on Duke.
John?
What's also interesting about that too, Phil, is the last home game Miami had was October 24th against Virginia. So they've gone over a month without playing at Landshark. And they get to play a home game on Saturday against North Carolina, which is kind of a big deal. Unfortunately, Miami has no shot at the title game because they don't play Notre Dame, and that's already settled. But they've got 2 home games left with North Carolina and Georgia Tech. So
yeah, they don't play Clemson either.
Nope. Well, they played Clemson, but they lost to them.
Yep, which we already know. That rolls me into the other topic I wanted to talk about. We already know who's playing for the ACC championship game, Notre Dame and Clemson, as the ACC's done some schedule adjusting to make sure that both of those teams are playing for the title. You agree with that, or should they let the schedule play out the way they originally had it planned?
This season for me, I'm just going to use the hashtag 2020 because you see folks making up the rules as we go along. We talked about it in the first block about coming up with a game on 2.5 days notice. So expect anything, anticipate everything, and don't be shocked when stuff like this comes up.
Yeah. John Swofford's not stupid. He knows that 2 marketable names are in his conference now, Notre Dame and Clemson, and they're both in the top 4. So he knows that title game can be the most lucrative it has been in the history of that title game. And I've been to several of them. It's not really registered much on championship week. It's been way overshadowed by the Big 12 and the SEC title games. And you've seen it in the past with the tarps on the upper end of Bank of America Stadium, which is kind of embarrassing. This ensures that there's going to be a full house. Well, there should be a full house, but there won't be. And ensures that you're going to get a number that ESPN is going to like. You just don't know if it's going to be a blowout, but you got the stars. You got Ian Book, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got Travis Etienne, you've got the Golden Helmets against the Tiger Paw. This is for John Swofford, who's going out as commissioner at the end of the year. This is kind of his nirvana now. Yep. To have this title game and this matchup, and they were going to do everything they could to make sure that was going to stick and that both teams were going to be in the top 4.
John, the flip side of that is in the Big Ten, Ohio State, who got back out on the field this week and got a huge, quick and easy win over Michigan State, despite missing head coach Ryan Day and a slew of players.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk that their game next week against Michigan may not happen due to the virus, that it may get postponed, which would leave Ohio State 1 game short of qualifying for the Big Ten championship game.
Okay, big deal.
Well, the thing that I'm wondering about is there's already talk now that the Big Ten may try to pencil in another opponent for Ohio State to get them over the magic number and get them into that title game. Good idea? Bad idea?
I look at it, and for me, the notion of the Big Ten title game is irrelevant because of the CFP. The CFP is going to do what's best for business. And what's best for business is keeping Ohio State somewhere in that top 4. So I think that conference championships, if you stumble in your schedules this year, they've become largely irrelevant when you're looking at the CFP. It is a contributing factor, but when you have a team like Ohio State, to do what's best for business, you can't leave a team like Ohio State out of that mix just because it'll be the same old eyes, the same old complaints, and all of this kind of stuff. I think that going into the season, everything being equal, Ohio State would have been in the discussion for the CFP anyway. So the fact that they've only played 5 games and maybe we'll play a 6th, maybe they won't. I think that to deny Ohio State that opportunity, you're looking at two different lanes of traffic here. When it comes to the CFP, that's what I'm looking at if I'm Ohio State, and I think that's what the CFP is obviously looking at too. You want Ohio State in the picture. Big Ten to me, I could take it or leave it if you're going to line up one more for me. But at this point, and we've talked about it with Miami was off for 3 weeks, and they come back in and put 48 on Duke. I know it was Duke, but still, that idea of rest, coming back, rust, all that kind of stuff. I would think that if you're Ohio State right now, take the week off, get ready for the CFP, and have another 30 practices.
Well, you mentioned the irrelevancy of a conference championship. First of all, having Ohio State in the Big Ten title game is good for business for the conference.
No doubt.
I think it's in Indianapolis this year, right?
I think so. Yes.
So your alternative, if that isn't the case, and they can't come to an agreement, the ADs, as to giving another game for Ohio State or not having enough wins, is Indiana, which would fill up the house.
Yeah.
And it'd be a great storyline to have them in the Big Ten title game. But those fans aren't going to stay in the hotels and eat at the restaurants. They're going to go and drive up from Bloomington.
Nationally.
What's that?
Well, the Indiana versus Northwestern, or Indiana versus
I guess it would be Western. Yeah, because Iowa is.
Would that
Iowa would lose the tiebreaker
all nationally?
Probably not.
But it satisfies your sponsors and your advertisers. It fills that grid.
Exactly. I think it would have been a little better of a national presence had Michael Penix Jr. not gone down.
Right.
But Indiana's a great story, and it's not a bad alternative. But Ohio State is the gold standard, and they are in the top 4 and can go in the playoff. And you want that in your marquee game. Not only for national marketing purposes, but they're your gold standard. You want them in there and hoisting the trophy when it's over. So I can see the Big Ten doing that. If Michigan pulls that, and to me, it would be kind of a blemish on that rivalry as to why you would pull that if it's not the case. I mean, if it is the case, I understand. But if you're just doing it to get back at the Ohio State group, and knowing how bitter this rivalry is, wouldn't shock me. I think they should have another game to be able to get into the title, or just waive that win rule. And I'm sure that's, you got some powerful athletic administrators in the Big Ten. And if they want to waive the win rule, they can. And that wouldn't shock me if that happened.
Well, here's a question for both of you guys that I'll ask. We know the college football playoff at this point, every projection has it decided basically already that we're going to see Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State in that college football playoff.
Sure.
Is it good for the game to have that already determined this far out, especially since Notre Dame and Clemson play each other again, and yet they're still being theoretically are there?
I don't think, though, that the way that this is structured, and I mean, you can compare it to the Cook County elections in Chicago if you want, but when it comes to the CFP, once again, what's best for business? Not dropping either one of those two teams out of your top 4. If 2 beats 3, let's just say that one is number 2, one's number 3. If 3 beats 2, then all that does is flip those numbers, maybe drops the other team down to number 4. If 2 beats 3, it reinforces what we thought all along. So the number 2 team is where it should be, and the number 3 team is where it should be as well. So do not be surprised if there's any kind of machination going on. Literally, it's just shuffling those 4 cards, and those are the only 4 cards. The other 48 cards in the deck don't matter.
It just goes to the show to me that just trying to cobble together some kind of playoff or some kind of end of a season where we have a definite champion is not working. The BCS did not work.
No.
And this isn't working. And the only alternative I can see in all this is you go to a full FCS type format, where you put in 16, or if you want to have the top 4 get a bye, put in 22, however you want to structure this, or go back to the bowl system. The bowl system, look, it may not have gave us a clear national champion, but on New Year's Day, you were locked on because Texas got beaten the Cotton Bowl. Now you have to watch the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl and the Rose Bowl. And you were flipping back and forth, and you were into it. Even some of the minor bowls, I mean, they had some implications as well. With a tournament type format like we have in the FCS, I don't know if Cinderella will make her presence known in a football tournament as it does in the NCAA men's basketball tournament, because whenever I hear arguments about doing a playoff like that, Cinderella is always brought up. You don't have that element. I don't think you'll ever have that element in football. As good as Coastal Carolina is, I don't think they could beat Alabama if they met in a 1 through 16 format, seeding format. It won't happen. As good as we think the Sun Belt is, they just don't have the athletes or the depth to compete with that. So that element isn't going to happen. It doesn't happen in the FCS. I mean, you have dominant teams there.
North Dakota State, always there.
South Dakota State, Stephen F. Austin. Those are James Madison. Those are the teams that kind of, the cream rises to the top. But I think you have interesting and compelling matchups out of that people would gravitate to. And would it be as good as the NFL playoffs? I mean, that remains to be seen. What would have to be worked out is you can't do neutral sites. No, because fans can't travel that much, especially in football. You have to do top seed gets the host, and then do your neutral sites in the semis and the finals, or however you want to work it. But just putting together 4 teams in a playoff is not working. So you're going to either have to make a decision and go fully in to a playoff format with brackets, or you're going to have to go back to the old bowl system, is my opinion. I don't think there's anything, it's either black or white. I mean, there's no gray area in this.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of summarize it quickly by saying it takes the competitive edge out of the game when you know that the other 126 teams in college football don't have a chance to be in the playoff, and we're still 3 or 4 weeks before the end of the season. What is there to play for?
And I'm telling you guys, if I'm the American, if I'm the Sun Belt, if I'm the Mountain West, all the group of 5 teams, I would explore a possibility of having your own national championship. No doubt. Because it is marketable. There will be a television entity that would want to pay to produce those, to air those, and and your regular season will be compelling. It may be we may be watching games on streaming services, and that's fine. But no, I think they need to really consider if they're being shut out like this, and we're seeing how the Sun Belt has kind of made a name for themselves. American has always made a name for themselves and had some really good football programs. It's time to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Before we wrap up here on the show, guys, the Coaching Carousel has already gotten up and running. We have a new head coach to be at the University of South Carolina. Multiple reports saying that Shane Beamer will be the new head coach there. Good move. Obviously, we talked about this pre-show. Not a big surprise to anybody that follows the SEC or even South Carolina. But do you like that? The Gamecocks making an early move before things kind of get going on the carousel?
They knew who they wanted. They went after it. So it's going to be a tall order. And how much patience is the South Carolina fan base going to have with Shane Beamer? Yes, I know he's been there before and he's been a part of coaching staffs past. But once again, how much patience are you going to have with somebody like Shane?
Well, obviously he's got the bloodlines. His dad was is Frank Beamer, who was highly successful at Virginia Tech. Look,
And
Shane
one of the
Beamer is
nicest guys in college football.
one of the nicest guys in college football. Somebody who I've gotten to know in the 15 years I was with the ACC. And I love the guy. And I've met Shane many times, just like his father, salt of the earth. But Shane did it right. I mean, he didn't exclusively hang on to his dad. And he went off to South Carolina as an assistant with Steve Spurrier and learned under Spurrier, apprenticed under him, as well as Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, being a
And a
part of
stop
his
at
staff,
Georgia.
and a stop at Georgia as well. So he did the right things. He went to big programs and apprenticed under some of the top coaches in the country. So you add that up. I mean, yeah, there's some success. There's chances for success there for South Carolina, and I think I think it's a really good hire for South Carolina. He among the staff, he wants to keep Connor Shaw on the staff, which I think is big because I think Connor Shaw was there when Shane Beamer was coaching there,
And you get to keep Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah.
Who's right now the top junior quarterback in the country, and he's still part of that pipeline. So you don't want to lose a quality quarterback in Gunnar Stockton coming out of the high school.
Beamer also has a relationship with Mike Bobo, who was brought in this past year as the offensive coordinator, and there's a lot of talk that Bobo may be sticking around as well.
So that's probably was very attractive to Ray Tanner.
Yeah.
To keep that staff intact, at least some of the elements that are very popular with the personnel there. But this is his first jump into the head coaching waters, and it's in the SEC and it's in the East. So I think there's going to be an adjustment period. But when you go with who he's apprenticed under and who his dad is, I mean, bloodlines work in this. I think there's going to be some success coming down the pike in Columbia. He's proven he can recruit. So give him 2-3 years and see what happens.
Yeah, there's a little bit more college carousel talk here. Lots of discussion about Texas and the future of Tom Herman. And the name that keeps popping up for reasons I can't quite understand, the on-again, off-again flirtation with Urban Meyer.
Shiny object.
I think keeps retiring and coming back.
I really think that he's enjoying television right now. And I don't know if he wants to jump back into that mess again, especially at Texas. I mean, it's one thing jumping to Ohio State. That's kind of his wheelhouse. That's where he was from. That was his dream.
Mm-hmm.
But that is highly political. Tom Herman is finding out. And what's killing Tom Herman right now is, the wins and losses are one thing, but it's the fact that Texas A&M is in the SEC and having top recruiting classes, and now they're number 5 in the country right now. I think that's the telltale sign of Tom Herman's fate. So there's a powerful booster base there that obviously wants to see some kind of change. I don't know what Chris DeConte wants to do. It's his decision. Does he have a short list? Is Urban Meyer on that short list? And who wants that job?
Best analogy that I read this weekend about that was Urban didn't want to go to Dallas and be the Cowboys head coach because you have to deal with Jerry Jones, the GM. Imagine going to Texas and not having one Jerry Jones, but 9 of them in the Board of Regents.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't want that headache.
Excuse me. Before we wrap it up here, guys, one quick news nugget that popped up here on a Sunday afternoon as we record this. Mark Stoops making some changes at Kentucky as Eddie Gran, his offensive coordinator, is out the door. Kentucky struggled on offense for this season for sure. And had he not been saved by Lynn Bowden last year, probably last year too.
Yeah.
Interesting move there.
It's the first stage. This is where you make your assistants, you make those changes. This buys Stoops another year. If it doesn't happen with the assistants and the assistants changing after 2021, the discussion now involves Mark Stoops.
Got anything else, Wilkie, before we wrap it up?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, then we'll wrap it up. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. You've made it to the end of the show. Congratulations. For OSG Nelson and Jay Wilkerson 16, I am OSG Phil. We are the Online Sports Guys. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I'm sure there will be plenty to talk about next week when we hit you with another episode of The Review. You've been listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Thanks for listening to The Review. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. And enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.